We're back. Sober Fix Podcast, still refusing to let addiction win. We got another guest on. We got Deborah Yager. She's got quite the story. Sex work, stripping, addiction, fast money, moving different places, trying to outrun herself and escape her addiction. Then she talks about getting sober, meeting her husband, and the transformation that has taken place. She's now a co-owner of Yager Training. They've helped thousands of people. I will put that information in the details. If you're looking for sober coaching, I'll put that in the episode details. Let's get into this, guys. I think you're going to enjoy this one. What's going on, guys? Another episode of the Sober Fix Podcast is Drew. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope that sobriety is going well. And whatever sobriety means to you, Deborah and I were just talking about that. It's kind of a little bit different for everyone sometimes. And Deborah's the guest on today, Deborah Yager. She's a master trainer of NLP. We'll get into all that. I'm excited about that. High performance coach and a co-founder of Yager Training. Deborah, how you doing today?
Doing so well, and it was so wonderful to get to know you a little bit better off air.
Yeah, it's cool to hear some of your story as well before we get started here. It's man, I feel like we're all so different, but when we've dealt with the addiction stuff, we get it. We understand what it was like.
We could have had some fun together, but a lot of tragedy.
Yeah. And that's what I tell people today too. I'm like, look, I had a lot of fun in the beginning.
Right.
I wouldn't have got stuck on this stuff if it didn't bring me enjoyment and good stuff in the beginning, but it just turned on me, and it just once it turned on me, I just couldn't get a grip on it. But I want to start off, Deborah. Why don't you go ahead and let everyone know, where are you from? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Columbia, Missouri, so the show me state, and you can get in a lot of trouble there because there's really not much to do. And when I was 18, I moved to California, then wound up in Vegas, California again, and then a Texas girl for a while, and now Utah. So I actually like to move every 6 to 8 years. There's something about it. I like to put myself in a new environment and immerse myself. But in the past, I will be honest with you, I was running, right? Because, shit would get so bad, then I would have to move, either running away from a relationship or destroying relationships. Whenever it got really intense, I bailed. And so that's why I moved a lot in the past. I remember in Vegas, one time I actually moved 7 times, and I think it was like in a period of 6 years or something ridiculous. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Anytime the heat was kind of on, and I had burnt some bridges, or a relationship went just terrible, or something was going on, and I would try and go somewhere new, and which would be a good thing nowadays, but back then it was I just followed myself there, and I'd run into kind of the same issues. I want to ask you, when did drugs kind of become a part of your story?
So the first time I ever used pot, I think I was 13. I snuck out of my house with my girlfriends and some boys, and we were smoking pot on the couch. And I remember it being absolutely terrible experience. I was so fucking in my head, and I felt like my heart was pounding out of my chest. And so that was not really my favorite thing to do, but I did it because of the peer pressure. But alcohol was my thing at a young age. I just felt really comfortable for the very first time. It was just so uncomfortable with me in my body ever since I could remember, as far back as the first level of consciousness. Being a little girl, I was always in a lot of stress, anxiety, just in a lot of pain, a lot of fear. And so when I drank for the first time, I'm like, this is nice. This is me, right? I could be myself. It was really difficult for me to look people in the eye and speak. I had this huge thing where like words wouldn't come out right. And, I was a pretty girl, and I attracted some attention, and there was a lot of girls that, kind of wanted to kick my ass in school. And so there's this whole dynamic, and I wanted to be powerful, and I felt like I had all this stuff inside of me, but it wouldn't come out. And so alcohol was one of those things where I felt alive and I felt free and I felt like myself and I could be myself and I could be seen. And very shortly after that, it slipped into other things like cocaine, ecstasy, smoking crack, and we did foilies and all kinds of stuff. We got into it pretty quick. And also Adderall. We were always taking Adderall. A lot of our friends. I was diagnosed with ADHD, and so I had Adderall, and I was on all the pharmaceuticals. I remember the first time I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety. I think I was 13, and I had a prescription for Xanax. So it wasn't difficult to get pharmaceuticals back then, and it was just kind of a part of the thing. And yeah, I went through a phase hanging out with the interesting crowd. I was really in love with this boy, and it didn't end up working well. I got pretty promiscuous really fast after that. And then I ended up putting myself in a situation where I blacked out, and two boys had their way. And so after that, I remember waking up feeling violated, right? I mean, some people would call it rape. They were older than me. I'm also taking responsibility for the situation because I was putting myself in certain situations that, yeah, I take radical self ownership for all of the decisions I've made in the past. And so after that, I remember this kind of a split happen, and there's a part of me that was really angry, and also there's a part of me that, and this is another thing that was going on underneath the hood, because I was really struggling in school. I got labeled at a young age with learning disability, dyslexia, all that stuff, and so I had this construct that I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't going to amount to anything in higher education, and so I felt like this dirty slut, and I had a lot of attention from men. I was working at a couple different restaurants and, waiting tables. And this gentleman, one of my regulars that used to come in, he said, why don't you try doing, bachelor parties and stuff like that. And I was like 16 or 17. And so the first guy that ever hustled actually wasn't from a bachelor party. He was a guy in a wheelchair, which was one of my restaurant guys. And I would do like I would kiss him and like I would do lap dances for him. And it gave me like so much power. Like there was all this power wrapped in with, looking beautiful and being adored. And also there's a huge chip on my shoulder, like, well, if I'm never going to be successful this way, and if I am like this slut that, kind of like this girl that everybody knows that she's been around the block, this is my way to success. And so that was my first trick. I didn't ever have sex with him, but I did like manipulate him and do sexual favors for him to give me my first check to go to the mall. And I tried to get a car out of him, but he turned to be not the most profitable venture. But anyway, shortly after that, I started stripping, doing these shows, and then that within that, there's just a lot of drugs and stuff like that. In fact, one of the women that I worked for, she saw that I got really out of control, and I was 17, 18, maybe I was 18 by then. Um, and she told me to go to rehab. So I ended up going to rehab, and I sat there in rehab, and I'm like listening to the conditioning that they say, and there's nothing. I just want to say this to everybody. Everybody has their own path to sobriety, health, and vitality. For me, when I was sitting there listening to them preach this sermon that, you like as an alcoholic and an addict, it's kind of like a cucumber. This is a metaphor they said, is going into vinegar, and you can't unpickle a cucumber. And I remember feeling really collapsed in that moment of like, holy shit, like I've destroyed my life. I have this disease. I'm never going to get better. And so then I carried around this belief system that I was an addict and alcoholic. Shortly after that, got out, started stripping, and then ended up moving to San Diego. And there's a long story between then and then before I ended up in Vegas, which was the darkest point of my life. That's where I got on methamphetamine for like a year and a half, and I smoked it. I knew that methamphetamine, that if my drug dealer / pimp did get put in jail or die, I would not have been able to get off of it. And I prayed every day that something like that would happen. Not that he would die, because I wouldn't want somebody to die, but he ended up getting locked up. And that's how I got off of that. But yeah, that was how I got initiated into it. And there's so much pieces in between. So you can ask any question. I'm open book with this kind of stuff. And we can also focus too on the transition as well, because I think that's some of the most beautiful part.
Yeah, and, well, I loved your honesty too, just laying it out there, and that was one of the things that, really got my attention when I was looking at your guys' website, and you talked about that, how, women need to be able to feel confident in telling their whole story and not feel ashamed and stuff like that, so I just wanted to add that, that just came up as you were talking, and I wanna ask too with the stripping, because I've always wondered this, like such quick, fast money, and I look back and if I ever had the opportunity to be a stripper back in the day, I mean, I probably would have died all that fast money with
It
how
was
bad I
so
yeah.
much fun, and I still there's still parts of me that miss it. I have 2 stripper poles, like, it's a part of who I am, like, you'll never get that part of me out, the dancer, the I love that part, and it's art. So that's one thing that I actually loved about that, like, I would get empowered by it, and the control and power that you have mixed in with money and then the drugs, it was intoxicating. I mean, it was so much fun until it wasn't. And, I would attract these really abusive men, because I was attracted to the mafioso type of drug dealer. That was like attractive to me. And I actually would say with an identity that I'm a hoe, like I'm the side piece. And I would be okay with, I would actually encourage my man to sleep with other women. And there's nothing wrong with that too, being poly or whatever, like whatever gets you off. But it was also coming from a place of like, I didn't value myself enough to really speak my truth in the relationship. And I look back at all the people that I attracted in my life, and it was just a reflection of what I thought I deserved. Because at the deepest level, I thought I was broken and I thought it was disgusting and that I didn't deserve healthiness and happiness. And so I would choose people in my life to reflect back what I thought about myself. I didn't realize that at the moment. And that's why I would move from place to place, that I'm never going to get with that fucking asshole again. And then I would go and, attract the same thing. Little did I know that I was the asshole that was projecting it out onto other people. And I also got a lot out of being a victim. I was this maiden, and at the unconscious level, it was almost like I had a badge of honor whenever I would get physically abused because, like, look at me. Like, I had this whole manipulation thing where I wasn't smart, so you have to do it for me. And look at me, I'm so broken because at the unconscious level, I thought that if you had more problems, that equated attention, which equated love. And so there's all this shit that was underneath underneath the program that was driving this force to use the drugs to numb, to feel confident, but a false sense of confidence. And then on top of that, I also had body dysmorphia. And so there's a whole binging and purging thing. And so the methamphetamine and the cocaine and the Adderall was also using a tool to look a certain way because in the stripping industry, especially in Vegas, it's a little bit more, you're nothing but a number type of situation. They make you walk up and down the catwalk, the bend over, they squeeze your fat the way you were, like, and they're like, they won't give you a good shift if you don't look a certain way or have a certain body type. And so there's a lot of pressure externally to look a certain way. And it was a survival tool. So there's all of that was also on top that was feeding this addiction that would manifest in the ups and downs.
Yeah, it sounds like you have such a good grasp on kind of the different things that were kind of feeding your addiction. You mentioned a lot of the, having to be perfect or whatever for them. And then you mentioned kind of the having these labels on yourself and kind of using the victim mentality that was feeding it as well. How did you start to understand all this? Was it getting sober and kind of looking back and understanding all these thought patterns that were contributing to your addiction? Or how do you have such a good understanding of it today?
Well, it's the work that I do now, and I found it. I mean, okay, so in Vegas, and I'll just take you to the edge. I remember getting arrested for this time it was more significant than the other times, and I actually stayed overnight in jail in the red and the orange jumpsuit, and looking around, and I realized if I didn't change something, I would be there or dead. And so I actually surrendered. I asked for help, and that was the very first time that I asked for help, really sincerely, like I really want to change. And it's interesting because about 6 months later, I forgot about all this. 6 months later, 2 people show up in my life and, that were trainers in neurolinguistic programming, and they invited me to come to this 3-day workshop, and they were different than anybody I met before. They talked different, they felt different, they had a relationship, they were beautiful, they were vibrating, and they were like, "You can have whatever you want." And I'm like, "You are full of shit because, like, I don't know what you're talking about, but for some reason, I'm gonna trust you because you feel like you know what you're talking about," if that makes sense. And I did. I trusted them, and I went to this workshop, and I'll be honest with you, and the entire time I was running my strategy of I wanna run, and I watched one by one these people having this transformation. They would have people come up on stage, different people from all walks of life that had severe trauma that would release this stuff in a very short amount of time. And I said to myself, I really want that. And I would look at these two people, and it was this husband and wife tween that was so gorgeous and loving and kind to each other, fulfilling their purpose. And I'm like, I want that. And so when they said they talked about the offer of continuing on the path, I literally levitated out of my chair, and I talked to one of their coaches. And this is really important because and why I'm saying this whole process is because, again, there was another barrier of me even saying yes to myself. I remember telling the coach that I didn't have the money, right? I didn't have the time. It was all lies. I was telling myself the BS that gets in the way, right? And one by one, she peeled back the layers of my bullshit and showed me the possibility of my change. And in that next event, 3 days in, still using Xanax, Adderall, Oxycontins, Loratab, smoking meth, and drinking about a fifth a day, I had my miracle breakthrough where it was almost like it was a miracle because what happened in that moment in time, first of all, I bailed. I didn't show up the third day because my parts. Have you heard of parts?
I have not.
Okay, so when somebody has lots of trauma, um, in and out of trauma, and most people have a lot of parts. Our unconscious mind, which is it's the mind of your body intelligence. It runs our behaviors, our habits, our belief systems, our emotional reactions. Your unconscious mind will split off neurologically and create this part of yourself to protect you from whatever's going on in the environment. And so some of these parts will act as controllers. It could be the berater inside of yourself, the inner critic. It could be the one that always bails. It could be the number through alcohol, cutting, whatever it is. It's trying to prevent you from feeling the pain. And so my parts were trying to get me to bail because they were like, oh my gosh, you're so out of your lane. And my trainers called me that next day. I ended up smoking meth that night and relapsing on meth at night. And they called me the next day, like, you need to get down here because this is important for your change. And I showed up. And after that, my integration happened. And I've never felt so silent inside my body and my mind than in that moment. I had never felt so high in that moment than in any other moment that I've ever taken all the drugs together at the same time. I never felt so whole in that moment. And I found myself. And that lasted for about 6 months. So I went home after that and I threw all my pillows down. I got rid of all my pipes. I trashed all my alcohol. And I'm like, holy shit, this is like a whole new me. I couldn't even stop smiling. Everybody thought I was crazy, everybody that knew me, because I'm like smiling all the time. I just like, I felt so light. And it was a freaking miracle. And so again, I had enrolled in the next event because I knew that I needed to get there, but I didn't know how to quit dancing. So there's like layers by layers to change your life and change your entire environment. It takes for some people short amount of time. For me, it took some time. Um, I ran out of money. And because I still had the belief system that you have to look a certain way to attract money and clients, I ended up going to get a prescription for Adderall, losing weight, then going back to the strip club, doing the sex work, make the money to get to the next training. And then I ended up meeting my husband in that training. So the love of my life. And we've been together ever since. So this is a love story too. And so he is a big part of my transformation because when we met, we fell in love. I told him everything. I tried to push him away, my old strategy. The part of me was like, you're not good enough. I basically told him everything that we're saying right now the first time that we met. And for the very first time, I felt like I wasn't judged. And he was actually really curious about how this beautiful being could have such a fucked up life. Where is it in her mind that's creating this reality? And so we hooked up pretty fast, and he invited me to come live with him in California. And he said, if you really want to change your life and you really want to get away from the stripping, you really want to get away from the dancing, you got to cut it cold turkey and leave the environment to start healing. And for that was the first time that I ever moved, and it actually worked because I did the work. So I had the tools because I had been through the level 1 training. I'd been through the level 2 training. I had all these tools. I had a new environment. I had somebody that cared about me that also said to me when I went into victim consciousness that I wasn't broken. He said to me whenever I would say, but I'm an addict, or I'm stupid, or I'm not good enough, he's like, you're telling yourself lies. And then I also had an external community of my NLP world, people that do transformational coaching and training. They're like, you can do whatever your heart desires. You are healed. You are already whole. It is already done. And so, with that and the divine will, and for me to take radical self responsibility of my life, and I mean everything. I mean, I take responsible for everything. I take responsible for my parents, everything that I attracted in my life, all the people that hurt me, but all the things that I did. I've released the shame and the guilt. I've let go of the fear. And now, over the years, I mean, it was a whole process of doing deep shadow work and transformation and looking at these parts and loving on myself and like forgiving myself and, parenting myself. Then I decided that I wanted to start a business around it because I had so much transformation in myself. I'm like, this is the work. This is my great work. This is the thing that I'm supposed to do that's beyond me that will allow me to heal in a deeper way and also serve humanity with a story. So the story is not just a story, it's something that actually impacts people. And so he encouraged me to do that. And that was a whole nother level of breakthrough, is getting out of your own way and putting yourself out there and talking about it and then selling yourself as a coach. And who am I to be a teacher because I didn't even barely finish high school, and who want to learn from me? And so that was a whole process itself. And so it's been we met in 2013. It's been a transformational experience. We started our business in 2015. We've been training, all kinds of people around the world. And this work, a lot of our people actually now are holistic practitioners, entrepreneurs that just want to be better leaders, people coming on the transformational space. It's just been a wild freaking ride. And I feel like I'm still learning. We all are. By the way, I still got shit. I'm still working through it. There is no perfection here. And I think that's why we're here, is to make a lot of mistakes so we learn and grow our soul. And so that's basically in a nutshell, the transformation experience.
Yeah, it's such a powerful one as well. And I want to kind of go back to when you met your husband and you're kind of telling him everything, and you said it, you kind of had the intention of like, hey, look, I'm going to push him away a little bit by telling him too much. What was it like to finally have that person that you open up to and you weren't being judged? How did that make a difference for you?
Yeah, because one of my biggest fears was that who would want to be with somebody that was a whore? Because that's what I called myself, right? I called myself a whore. Like, I was one of the strippers that was like, "Oh, you guys all lie about what you do, but you all turn tricks." Because I would see the stuff, but they would all say that they were like the good, clean strippers. But I identified with it. Like, no, I'm not lying. This is who I am. I am a whore. And so there was a part of me that really didn't think that I could ever find somebody that was a normal human being, first of all, that would ever desire somebody with a story like myself. And so when I had him feed back to me, like, wow, with curiosity and kind of fascination, uh, it was the most magical feeling that I'd ever had. Right. And so you could see how I fell deeply in love with him very quickly. I mean, we also, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. In the beginning of our relationship, we, we went at it because, he wasn't standing for my victim consciousness. And the more that he wouldn't support me in my victim consciousness, the more victim that would come out. All my strategy would come out. There's times where you'd find, alcohol bottles shoved in the, inside the sheets and stuff. Like, I mean, it was a wild ride, but it's so funny. He probably is going to kick my butt for saying this. And it's a joke. He's like, he needs to write a book that he tamed a stripper. It was a wild ride, but it's exactly the medicine that I needed, is somebody not putting up with my stuff. And because I grew up in a family that you can manipulate through having trauma and drama, right? And my parents are, by the way, my parents are wonderful human beings. They could have never stopped me on the path that I was going on. I needed to go through that. It's my soul's purpose, I truly believe. And so, yeah, so it was a different type of medicine.
Yeah, and I want to ask you too, because I read as well on your website. You talked a little bit about, and you mentioned it today, talking a little bit about just the shame and the guilt. I know when I got sober, I had so much shame, I had so much guilt. I used to just look back at all the things I did, the money I stole, the felonies that I racked up, the cars I crashed, the relationships that I burned, and it was hard for me to get over that. I used to just
Right.
run it through my head all the time in early sobriety. I want to ask you, what helps you kind of get past a lot of that shame and guilt, just from stuff that had gone on in either addiction or just in the past?
Yeah. So I come from the belief system. So this is the philosophy that I use in my model of the world, is that it took time, right? So it took time for me to actually work through this and clear the negative emotions. So with the work that we do it's called the Big Six Breakthrough, where you're letting go of the anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, and shame. And you can actually let it go with the lineage. You can let go with past lives and this lifetime. So I was doing a lot of work. I was doing a lot of integration, inner child healing work, a lot of forgiveness exercises. And the more that I did the internal work, the easier it was to let go. And I also come from the presupposition, as a belief system that I put out in the universe to create my reality, is that I believe our soul comes in here with an intention to learn. Like, I think that's one of our presuppositions. Like, I think that's one of the reasons why we're here as a soul. And I think that the way that we learn is through sinning. And the word sinning in the Bible, I think, has been twisted and manipulated. Because if you look it up, and there's nothing wrong with religion, I just think that sometimes things have been lost. Um, the word sin means missing the mark. Also, the word perfectionism means teleosis in Greek, which means spiritual maturity, which, from my perspective, going out and making lots of mistakes and learning from it and growing from it, and then serving through that growth, is becoming spiritually mature. And so I believe, even when in the past, that some of the times I was not doing the best thing that I could with the resources I had, and I actually was intentionally hurting people. I have forgiven myself for that. I've forgiven for all the people that I've hurt, but I've also forgiven all the people that have hurt me. And I feel like we came in this contract together to bump against each other to have each other grow. I believe that. Whether that's true or not, that's how I've worked through that. And I've used this story as a way of service. Because I will share it, and then I'll have people come and say, you know what, like, because you shared it so, thoroughly and authentically, I don't feel so alone. And oh, by the way, I used to do sex work in high school or in college, or oh, by the way, my daughter is really suffering, and I felt I was blaming myself but after listening to your story, I realized that she had her own path, and this is part of her spiritual path, just stuff like that. And so after sharing it and using it as a story for change, that was the last piece of true forgiveness of all the things that I've done from the past. And then, there's another layers of, like 3 years ago, we grew our business to a really amazing success, and we hit a glass ceiling, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that happened. My brother died. I was telling you about that before we got on this podcast. My brother died of fentanyl. All of our dog dies. All these things died in our life, and there was some things that happened inside of our business, and we got slandered online, and some of it was stuff that you don't want to have said about you, and some of the stuff, like, there was things that did happen too, and like, I take full responsibility for that, and I did beat myself up for that for a long time, but I also used it as a catalyst of learning. And so, as I think that no matter what mistake you make in your life, As long as you're learning from it, holding on to shame and guilt is useless because it actually attracts more situations for you to learn more about that situation. So if you hold on to that frequency and vibration, you will continue to have that opportunity over and over and over and over again until you get the learning. And once you get the learning, you won't do that behavior anymore, from my perspective.
Yeah, and I want to ask you too as well. When did you start opening up and just being so honest about your story? What was that like? What was kind of the last push that made you go from, "Hey, look, I'm healing myself, I'm turning my life around, but now I'm going to start actually just putting it out to other people and letting people know exactly what I went through." When did you start doing that?
So when we first started training, I would only talk about it inside the container of because inside the container of our training. So it wasn't like something we would put out online or anything. And I would use it in coaching sessions as a way for transformation of, using it as storytelling to help people see the possibility that they can change too. The first time I ever did it on a podcast was when we first moved to Austin, Texas, 2018. And it was fascinating because the first time I ever said it out online, immediately after I got off, I called my parents and was like, by the way, I just did this and I hope you still love me. And they actually supported me, which was really amazing. I could have done that. I was too pansy to do it before I did the podcast. But I was really concerned about my family in Southern Missouri because they're very beautiful religious Christians, and I didn't want to bring shame to them. And they actually reached out to me and said, I'm so glad that you shared the story. Now it makes a lot of sense why you were doing the weird things that you're doing. We didn't understand what was going on with you. And so immediately after that, I had a sore throat. Like I went into a healing crisis. That's what we call it in the holistic medicine space. I literally had a sore throat for 3 days. My throat chakra was healing because for the very first time I was able to speak my truth to the public. So yeah, uh, and ever since then it's been out there on the web, and I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah, and I want to ask you too. Kind of, you mentioned your family being able to connect some of the dots. Oh, this is why you were kind of acting like that and stuff. Were you met with any negative comments from anyone by being so vocal about what you went through, or was everyone pretty much positive?
Everybody was pretty much positive. I've had people, so the slandering online happened later on. And
Okay.
that was another level of initiation. Basically the worst things that you would ever want said about you was said by an employee of our, it was our first employee. And to be honest with you, Brandon and I, when we were first starting our business, we're not very conscious leaders. We'd bicker and yell at each other. And so there was this whole dynamic, and I treated her like a friend and a sister. And so there was stuff that probably wasn't the most professional. And so about a year after she left our organization, and I'm sending her love and light because I love her so much. She said some pretty ruthless stuff, stuff that was not true from my perspective, but I honor her perspective. But again, I know that she, and from her perspective online, this goes back to forgiveness, and this is why I'm bringing it up. Is if she felt like I was doing so many terrible things to her, it was so hard, like, it hurt my heart so bad because I would never intend to do that to her, that was never the intention, um, and I also respect her perspective, right? And for me, it was the most transformative experience of really figuring out who I am as a person, because coming away from this drug addiction and coming away from that whole thing where I had completely destroyed my reputation. Think about it. I left like I was like, I'm just going to ruin my reputation. This is why I identified with a whore. Like I actually was like, being bad was actually my reputation. And so then I had said, I am not that. This is who I am now. And I created this perfect model of what I thought I was. And basically, she gave me the opportunity to shatter that false identity as well. And so whenever that happened and those things were said, like we're a cult and all this stuff, good stuff that they say about people will say about you if you start doing transformational work, all that stuff, it for the very first time, I actually figured out who I was inside. That was like the shattering of that level of ego, and really, really starting to love myself and integrate all the parts of myself of forgiveness. And so it was such a blessing. So again, when we hurt each other in this world, it has a purpose, should we choose to see it that way. And again, I also believe that everybody's responsibility is to find the blessing in everything. And so if somebody still holds a grudge, there's something for their soul to learn from holding a grudge in this lifetime. I think that some people come into this planet to suffer, and that's why they're here. I think people come into this planet, to wake up and then share and be a light. And I think there's some people in this planet that come into the planet just to trigger the F out of people. I truly believe that. I think that there's soul contracts where people come into each other's lives, because we do a lot of past life regression. There's times where I've gone back in lifetimes where I've been the abuser, right? There's even been times in our relationship, because I came from abuse, that I technically you could borderline call it abusive relationship to my husband in the beginning, because I hurt people, right? And so I look at every behavior, no matter how terrible, and some people don't like this perspective. I look at it as being a part of reality, and I look at it as a place where you can learn and grow from it. I think the shadow has equally as much value as the light.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. And kind of on the topic of relationships, I had a lot of chaotic relationships when I was out there because of addiction. Mainly 99.9% of the problems were caused by me and what I was doing, but a lot of chaotic relationships. I know you mentioned having issues with relationships when you were dealing with addiction as well. Was it weird to when you met your husband and everything, was it weird to be in a legit, like, nice, respectable relationship? Because I know for me, it was kinda like I had to get used to that, I was used to chaos out there, when I and then I all of a sudden I got sober and I'm trying to do things I'm trying to live right, and, it was just kind of an adjustment. What was it like for you kind of, going from the chaotic relationships to a good one?
Well, that was another thing that was fascinating too, is that early on in our relationship, my sex drive went out the window, right? So before I was always this very sexual person, but it was also anchored into trauma bonding. And so the way that it was in relationships is that I had a strategy where, like, I wasn't attracted to somebody unless they were, what do you call it? Have you ever heard of attachment styles?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so if they were avoidant, then I was attracted, right? Because, like, I would then, like, I'd be like, "Don't leave me," kind of thing. And so my husband is a secure attachment, and so the more secure he was, the more he would push me away. But then as soon as he became avoidant again, I'm like, "Don't leave me." And so there was all of this unwinding of stuff, and we're still working on it. There's still a lot of stuff that we're actually working with, um a Mayan, sex magic shaman Palladian priest. We've done all kinds of stuff working on our sexuality, because there's so much to unpack, especially because of my past, um, of sex and that dynamic, and, like, what does it look like in a marriage, and what is healthy and what is not healthy for me, and consent, and all that stuff has been unpacking those layers upon layers, so I'm not associating him with my past. And then also the layers and layers of the unconscious trauma that we created in the early part of our relationship. I keep saying marriage. We didn't get married until 2018, because I didn't want to marry him until I was certain that he was the one. So that was another thing. I was afraid to be married because I didn't want to screw it up. That was my thinking around that. And so in the beginning, our relationship was rather turbulent, and so it wasn't all rainbows and unicorns. It took a while to settle, and we're still unpacking stuff that we were unconscious about early on in our relationship. And it's a lifetime process. I believe that you attract the person in your life, to grow and transform. A lot of people are trying to become whole, but in actuality, they're showing you stuff inside of yourself. Like, I look at my husband as my mirror. Everything I can't stand about him is me, and everything I love about him is me, and vice versa. And so he is a teacher, a mentor in the mirror for me. And so all the behaviors that he annoys me about, there's stuff that I do exactly the same. And so we're constantly reflecting back on each other, showing each other our greatness. And the highest prime directive in our relationship is personal growth. And so if I could say anything out of this conversation, is that What has kept us together is having the tools, having a mission that's bigger than ourselves, and personal growth. Because no matter how bad it's got, we've always come back to center that this is a growth moment. And as long as we continue to grow from the mistakes we made, then we will continue to be together in this divine relationship because we're learning from it.
Yeah, and I like that you talk about just learning from it. There was a lot of years where I would go through stressors, pain, whatever it was, and I just didn't grow from it. I just continued to use it as kind of fuel for me to continue the cycle of getting high and stuff like that. I want to kind of ask you about the coaching stuff. I think I saw online you guys have helped over 500 people, something like that, hundreds of people. And I want to ask you, what do you find, like, what hinders people from growing, do you think? Like, what do you think is the main thing oftentimes that stunts people from either whether it's getting sober, having healthy relationships, getting better mental health? What do you think normally holds people back?
There's multiple things. So I look back at myself and at most people, before they're aware that they can change, most people don't think it's even possible. Because when I look back at my life until those people came into my life at the right time, I thought I was going to die that way. Because the norm and the conditioning, think about the conditioning, the programming of, like change and transformation. There's so much more mindset and stuff now mainstream, but back in the day, like, you're gonna have this disorder, you're gonna have it for the rest of your life, you're managing it. Same thing with disease. If you've been diagnosed with this disease, you manage it with a whole bunch of pharmaceuticals and you numb the pain of it. And that's the way it is. This is life. And so, first of all, I think most people are not even aware of how much they have power, that they can choose to change. And it doesn't take as long as a lot of people think it does. I mean, it's been, you know, 12, 13 years, right? For me, like when 2011 is when I first found Stephen Shea. Uh, for that amount of change to happen, that's relatively fast, right? And for how much my life has completely changed. Oh my gosh, if you had talked to me back then, said that I'd be doing this stuff in Egypt and going around the world and helping people and, serving at a deeper level and having a divine relationship and play and fun and all the things, I would tell you you're out of your freaking mind. And then, like, I freaking love my life. I was telling my friends in Egypt, we all went out there to do this initiation tour. And I fucking love my life. I feel so in love with my purpose and I feel so aligned with what I'm doing. And so I don't think people realize that they all can have that. Every single person can have it in their own unique way. It is their God given right, whatever they believe in spirituality, whether it was given to them to their gift in this lifetime was given to them by God or by themselves or their higher divine. They have something special to offer this world. And we're all here for a contribution and change. And all around the world, where you look in all the ancient civilizations, they all talk about this time right now, this 100-year period of time. We've been in it for the last 100 years, and we'll be in it for another 150 years. We're moving into an age of Aquarius. We're moving from into the new Pachacuti and the fifth Kali Yuga. All of this stuff is coming together at the same time from every tradition around the world, and everybody's saying that people are going to have their power and their divine back, and we're moving into a time where there's divine masculine and feminine balance, and we're going to be living in a beautiful place where we have health, happiness, and all these things, and we are all a part of that. And so I think most people get it plugged into the news and the matrix, and they hear the world is over, we're having the apocalypse and all that stuff, and all that shit is here to fear porn you into disempowerment, to keep you away from your divinity, and you are so much more than you think you are. And I think that that's the first thing, is unplugging yourself from the freaking matrix that we chose to put ourselves in to learn to know ourselves. I believe we came down here, put ourselves in the matrix, forgot about how divine we are, so then we could come back to the light of ourselves to learn who we are. That's why in the Greek temple it says, know thyself on the top. That's what it's talking about. And so that's the first thing, is that I think people don't, they're separated from their divinity. They're separated from the spark inside of them. The second thing is that once they know and that they're aware that this is there, that they have the power, the next step is taking radical self-ownership for everything. And I mean everything. I'm not saying, oh, yes, I'll take responsibility for this, but that thing, I'm not going to take responsibility. It doesn't work that way. Because as soon as you go into effect, as soon as you say that you're a victim of your disease, you're a victim of my upbringing or this financial situation that I'm in right now, whatever it is, you're giving your power away, because whatever you focus on in your life, you will manifest more of it. And I don't know if you've noticed that lately, is that things are manifesting faster and the transformation is happening faster. This is because of the era that we're in, where our manifestation capability and our superpowers are coming online. And so that's the two things: is people are not aware, and the second thing is they're not willing to take self responsibility, and the third is they don't have the tools and the skill set to then create their life. Because all of this body of knowledge, the stuff that I do, this is not new age. All of this is ancient wisdom that has been rebranded and packaged in mindset, manifestation, high performance coaching, all that stuff. This is nothing new. This is the stuff that the Egyptians were doing, the Mayans were doing, the Peruvians were doing it. The Druids were in North America, over in England, and the Viking, all that stuff. And same thing with the Native Americans here. They all knew these power tools. But then it got taken away and people forgot about it. And so bringing back the tools to be able to create the life that you want and to have your sovereignty back. Sovereignty is a choice. There's nothing outside of us that's controlling us. And that's the illusion that we need to get out of. And so once people have the tools, it's then creating the community and shifting it. I truly believe that our consciousness is raising enough that we're going to see a difference in humanity within the next 5 to 10 years. And some people may think I'm crazy, but I really truly see that I think that we're going to see a complete change, and people are going to be taking their power back. We're going to see that there's more opportunities for healthy food. The everything's crumbling, and so this new birthing is going to come through. And so I ask if any of you are resonating with this. You have a divine gift and power that's beyond what you even think is possible right now, and you are part of that change. And so I'm calling out all the people that are here to make a difference, because you're doing it. You're waking people up every day with this podcast. Like this is why we're here. And I think people get stuck in their day to day and the job that they think that they have to have because of the degree that they had to have and all this stuff. And all of that is lies and programs. You can shift it like that.
Yeah, and it's funny too because you speak so well, and you just are very fluent and know so much. And it's funny because I remember reading, I believe it was on your website, where you said that you had a problem with that when you were younger, with speaking and kind of
Oh,
motor.
yeah.
I think it was motor skills or something like that. Does it trip you out today being able to come on podcasts and being able to speak to other people and do the coaching stuff? Do you ever just look back and go, "Wow, I've come a long way"?
Oh, hell yeah. I'll tell you the truth. When I used to get on stages or before we would do our events in the beginning, I was terrified. And so I want everybody to know that's listening to this, if they feel inspired, but what I'm saying or my story, I want you to know that it didn't start out that way. I would literally have panic attacks looking somebody in the eye. I would have to go and do QTT. It's one of the modalities to let go of anxiety in the bathroom. I mean, this has been putting in the reps over and over. I made a decision when I had that miracle healing that I wasn't going to let fear or feeling not good enough or imposter syndrome or perfectionism to get in my way of helping other people with this work. And so there was something bigger that was driving me every day. You know what I mean? It wasn't about me. And so it gave me the freedom to fuck up over and over again. And every time that I would fail, every time I would look stupid, every time that and I still do, I get on podcasts and words don't come out and marbles in my mouth, but it's not my identity anymore. I'm like, whatever, it's not working today. Before I would beat myself up, like, you look so stupid, whatever. But that's the pattern that we're here to transcend. And I think that it was the thing that I actually came in with. That was one of the plans that I designed before I came into this physical body, is that the speaking thing would be the thing that I had to work on, and the fear and the self-doubt, all that stuff. It was like the mechanism of my games. If you look at it, I think of this reality as a fucking game. Like it's a freaking video game. I'm sorry, I'm using so many F-bombs. It means I'm in pretty good rapport with you, because whenever I start cussing, that's like my normal part that comes out. I
Oh,
feel
you're
like
good.
this is a video game that, we planned it out before we got here. And the things that we struggle with the most are our superpowers. Because look at it now. It's something that I transcended. Now I can help other people that struggle with speaking. It's the coolest thing. So if you look at all your challenges and all the pains and the sorrows as the biggest gift that you have to here to offer, it makes it so much more fun.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's something I've always kind of tried to preach to people that are just getting sober and stuff is a lot of the things, anything that we've been through, whether it's DUIs, car accidents, mental health issues, destroyed relationships, debt. I mean, just anything. When you walk through that and you find a way to change as a result of going through that, and you get sober for a while, all of a sudden it's like you have all these things that used to hold you back, that we used to have all that negative self-talk. You mentioned the inner critic before. All these negative things that we used to, or at least I used to hold against myself, it becomes a way of now relating to other people, and it becomes things that I've just finally walked through. And so I want to ask you, do you find now that all the things you went through over the years, any pain, any failures, any addiction stuff, any of the sex work stuff, do you feel like now you went through it for a reason so that now you can relate to more and more
Oh,
people
hell yeah.
or women?
Oh my God. Yeah. I love it. I'm so proud of it. So most people would be ashamed of it. I'm super proud of it. I know I'm super grateful for it. You know, I'm not proud of some of the behavior that I did, but I know that it happened for a reason because I can sit across from somebody in coaching and they can tell me the most horrific things that they're the most guilty or shameful about. And I'm like, yeah, I got you. Like, there's nothing that you can tell me that would surprise me at this point. And it gives me so much depth to work with people. And I'm so grateful and honored to have that understanding of life. It was like I was going through a PhD of a spiritual boot camp of human behavior, and I didn't realize I was doing it at the time. And so, yeah, I'm super, super grateful. I love my story. Eventually, I will share it in a book. That is the plan to actually write it out. That'll be fun.
Yeah, you've got to. You've got such a great inspirational story, and I think it would help a lot of people, motivate a lot of people, and that's an exciting thing. I do think you have to do that eventually. Deborah, we're
Yeah.
getting kind of towards the end here. I'll ask you something I typically ask every guest that comes on here. What would your advice be for someone who is just starting their journey with getting sober? They don't even know where to start. Maybe they've been through some of the stuff we've been through with the hard drugs. Maybe they've relapsed a bunch of times before. They just don't even know where to begin. What would your advice be for them?
I mean, I would advise to do some deep, deep behavioral transformational work, like the work that I did, because that was my personal path. I feel like it was the most transformative. And I've seen people that really are struggling with addiction come through and have massive transformation and in a very quick amount of time. And I also want them all. I want anybody that's struggling right now is that you're not alone and that you can do it. Everybody can do it. You can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. If he can do it, you can do it as well. And there are ways and tools to transform yourself to make it a lot easier than what a lot of people have said it is. And it is going to be challenging. It's going to take a lot of effort. And if you have the will and the desire, and you have the right support system around you and the right tools, anything is possible.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and I just want to ask you as well. Why don't you talk a little bit more about the training that you do? Who is Jaeger training for? Who would be a good candidate for someone that to contact you guys and try and get help?
Yeah, so it's somebody's on their personal growth and development journey or if they have behaviors in their life that they really want to change. What we do is we come together in a really amazing intimate environment. We have a couple of different ways of working with us. One of the things that's coming up at the end of the January, I don't even know when this is dropping, but we have about 4 a year It's called Your Vision Alchemy, and that's where I started. It was called something different, but in a nutshell, it's very similar to the same training that I took that then got me into the next layer that I walked away from that drug addiction with the miracle healing. And basically, in a nutshell, it's figuring out. I feel like in drug addiction, and when you're in it, you don't see the future. At least I didn't. And that's what really woke me up is that, oh, wow, there's a whole new world out there for me. And maybe this is possible too. And so your vision alchemy is really figuring out what you want in your life. Because I find that people that are in the addiction space, you're feeling such a void and you're just numbing the pain, but you're not focusing on the possibility. You're not focusing on the health that you could have. You're not focusing on the divine relationship or the career or being of service, is because you're in this feedback loop of hell and you haven't broken the loop. And so what this does is gets you up and out of it to then see the possibility of your future. And then we're doing deep, deep work. We go back in the past. We're letting go of traumas, letting go of negative emotions. We're doing the big six breakthrough: anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, and shame. And so you'll walk out of there feeling lighter. We're going to be doing ancestral stuff because a lot of times addiction can be passed down epigenetically through the DNA, working on that, changing the stories. And then it's putting it all together, getting inspired with your values, to then take inspired action. And so we do those about 4 times a year. And then from there, it's a great way to figure out if you loved working with Brandon and I. From there, I would guide you into our different retreats. We have a level 1, 2 masteries. We have all kinds of stuff that we do. But I think the Vision Alchemy would be the perfect place to start if somebody wanted to get a taste of it and have a lot of transformation.
Yeah, a lot of cool stuff. I looked at some of the retreat stuff on your guys' website as well, and I'll put all your social media, website, everything in the episode details. I'll finish off with one question here. What's a goal of yours over the next, let's say, a year to 18 months? What are you currently working on today? What is whether it has to do with sobriety or your business, your relationships, just your overall well being. What are you going to be working on over the next year?
Well, the next project that we're on, the reason why we got back from Egypt is that Egypt is going to be our next venture event. We have 3 different things that we do. We do Guatemala and Tulum, and then the next one is going to be Egypt. And so right now, we're in the process of hiring some of the people that have been working with us because we have a whole certification program that we do. And so my goal for this year is to train up the people that I love so dearly that by the way, all of the people that we work with become divine friends. Like we're all best friends. And for the very first time in a long time, I see the possibility of growing this business together and having my friends that have come through the program start training for us. And so that's what I'm focusing on this year. I'm really excited about giving the reins to other people and having them step up in their leadership to shine their light. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to be focusing on. And by doing that, it's going to be offering it in a new way to more people all over the United States and really growing and expanding our business. And yeah, making more impact through that.
Cool. Thank you so much, Deborah. Thanks for taking the time to come on here and tell me all about your story, your past, your present, what's going on in the future, and everything you've been through and stuff. Very inspirational, very inspiring. Thank you for your brutal honesty. I think that it's stuff like that that helps people, and it gets them going. And I think, at least for myself, I've found that anytime I've been vulnerable and kind of talked about things that I've been through, other people appreciate it. They do, whether they comment or email or say, hey, look, I've been through that as well, like you kind of talked about earlier. So thank you for coming on here, Deborah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Honored to be here.
Wow. Some people actually watch the full episode. I appreciate it, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what's going on with you. Drop a comment in there. Don't forget, we got the TikTok at SoberFix and also our Instagram at the SoberFix Podcast. If you want to come on the show and tell your story, reach out to me, soberfixpodcast at gmail.com. Let's go another week sober, guys.